Hello, I'm back today with a new tutorial about faith point generation. I was recently asked this question on how to really optimize faith point generation, and this is not going to be too specific, but I hope it's a little bit more in depth than what is actually available in the Stronghold Kingdoms wiki. So now, if you go into the research, the education tab of the research tree, you're going to find a branch called theology, and by researching this, you will gain faith points. For the first level, it's only 10 faith points per day. At the maximum level, which is 16, it's going to be 120 faith points per day. Now remember, that is tied to the world, so it doesn't matter which worlds you play. Each of them will have their own research for this, and it doesn't matter how many villages you have or what rank you are. Once you reach once you put 16 points of research into theology and have it maxed out, the faith points generated by that technology will remain at 120, which isn't a whole lot, which is why the best way to generate faith points is probably going to be through your villages. Now, there are special buildings, the religious buildings located in the general or the town buildings tab of the village build menu. Now, there are several different types. There are the small shrines, the large shrines, the chapel, the church, and the cathedral. Each corresponding one yields a higher amount of faith points, which is why some of the top players, from what I've seen, do not place the shrines down because they take up room that could otherwise be allocated for production buildings, I imagine. But pretty much, well, the chapel as well can be a little bit lackluster, given that it only generates 8 faith points per day. But I'll leave that decision ultimately up to you, because the cathedral is going to be the most important building at 100 faith points per day. This is somewhat close to the max amount of faith points you'd be getting just from researching, from fully maxing out theology in the research. And you can have at most 40 villages per world. So as you can imagine, that adds up quite quickly, and that's why I have over 5 million faith points in this world. Now, in addition to the two aforementioned methods of generating faith points, another important one is your parish, and it shouldn't be overlooked. The church in your parish will increase the amount of faith points you generate per day, which can really add up quite quickly if you have a fully upgraded church in your parish. However, there is a caveat to this, and that is if somebody takes over your parish, like let's say you're involved in a war, and you have a very high level parish, and somebody jumps into, an enemy jumps into your parish and monks it over to their control, they can quite easily delete the church, because there's actually no timer to prevent any sort of trolling to this extent, which is something that I've always been against, and I've always wanted Firefly to improve, but we've never gotten that. So the church is definitely powerful in the parish, and it should be upgraded, just maybe not too much, or if you feel the parish is going to be in immediate danger, you can actually end up losing quite a bit of resources from somebody flipping it and causing it sort of collateral damage. The practice is generally frowned upon amongst respectable players, but when somebody's losing, they can be a bad sport at times. Now, moving on from those three, we have cards. Now, cards, there is no card that actually increases your faith point production or will even give you faith points. Now, there's sort of a running joke that Firefly, in their ever-increasing greed, I guess you could call it, or need to monetize the game or increase microtransactions, would start introducing cards that would allow players to actually just get faith points by playing cards. So far that hasn't happened, but instead what we have here are the cards that are associated with religion that allow more efficient usage of your faith points, meaning that you'll be able to extend their usage for longer. For example, if we go down here, these cards are very expensive, but I mean, for the player who really doesn't care about the cost, you can get even protection. This is for interdiction. The expert protection card is a ×2 increase in the duration of interdiction given by monks, which would effectively allow your faith points to stretch twice as far as normally they would when it comes to interdicting villages. And as you might imagine, this has a very big impact on the game's politics for those who can afford to do so. But overall, from what I've seen, it's not very many players who've ever seriously used that card because it does cost a lot. And in general, I think it's easier just to have players in your faction interdict you. If you're a big player, that's generally the route that they take, is you'll have allies that will do the interdiction for you. They're sitting off farming and building up faith points instead that they can support you with. And overall, that's the better way to go about it. But, you know, the card option exists for the players who are interested in really stretching out their faith points a little bit longer if you're in a real struggle. And finally, we come down to the quests. Now, quests, some of them will give you a wheel spin. I don't actually have any wheel spins for the quest because I spun them in an earlier video that I did a study on what rewards you might expect from the quest wheel. But I do have a tier 4, which is somewhat exemplary of what you can expect from a quest wheel spin. And as you can see, there are going to be faith point rewards on the wheel. Now, it should be noted that in the quest wheel, the higher in rank you are, the more faith points you're going to receive. So it's usually best to save your wheel spins until you're level 18, I think. If you save your quest wheel spins until you are of that rank, you will get better rewards on the wheel spin, and that includes better faith point rewards. So, you know, if you're looking at a way to maximize your rewards, that's the way to go about doing it, especially for faith points. And I've seen this change the tide of war in games, because normally you would say, yes, this player, we can expect this player to run out of faith points anytime now. They're going to have to go into vacation mode to save their villages, because they're not going to be able to interdict their villages anymore because they're going to run out of faith points. And then they hit a lucky streak. They do a whole bunch of quests and get wheel spins, and one of them is a wheel spin that gives them like 40,000 faith points, and that just brings them right back into the game. So the wheel spins for quests in the game are some of the biggest wild cards when it comes to players increasing their faith points quite unexpectedly. And, you know, it's available to all players. I'm not going to say it's unfair, but it adds an element of random RNG to the game, and I don't really necessarily appreciate that in strategy games. But of course, you could say, the game is already pay to win, why do you really care? And you probably would have a fair point there. But those are the 5 different ways that you can either generate faith points in Stronghold Kingdoms or extend their usage a little bit. So I hope this answered any questions players have had about how faith points are generated. I didn't actually provide any examples of a village with fully maxed out faith point generation, but it's really as simple as placing down all the religious buildings available to your village in your village and then maxing out the church in your parish, well as the theology or research in your technology tree. And then the rest of it is pretty much up to chance or how deep your wallet is. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.